How long can a man withstand the weight of his own secrets? After 3 relentless days of interrogation, Gao Taiyu finally crumbled, admitting his role in Menglong's shocking murder with a vile confession that left investigators and the public horrified. What terrifying details did he reveal? And why did it take so long for the truth to break free? Stay with Red Carpet Revealed as we uncover the chilling secrets and expose the story behind the confession the world was never meant to hear. How long can a man hold on to silence when the truth presses against him with unbearable weight? After 3 relentless days of interrogation, Gao Taiyu, once a beloved face in the entertainment world, finally broke. His confession was not only vile but chilling, pulling the curtain back on one of the darkest scandals the industry has ever witnessed. What began as whispers of suspicion erupted into a storm of horror, as Gao admitted his role in the murder of Menglong. The interrogation chamber that had echoed with silence suddenly filled with words so damning they left investigators stunned and the public reeling. Menglong had been a rising star, celebrated not just for his talent but for the promise he carried. He was charismatic, ambitious, poised to step onto even greater stages. To his fans, he represented hope and inspiration. To his peers, he was both admired and envied. Behind the applause, Long's final months were shadowed by unease. He confided to friends about threats he couldn't name, dangers he couldn't fully explain. Some thought he was exaggerating, stressed by fame's pressure. But those words, in hindsight, now feel like warnings from a man walking toward his doom. The night of his death was initially reported as a brutal, senseless crime. Rumors spread quickly, painting pictures of random violence, of jealousy, of betrayal. Yet the investigation, from the beginning, pointed towards something more sinister. Whispers of Gao Taiyu's possible involvement shocked many. Gao was a star in his own right, admired for his roles and adored by legions of fans. How could someone with so much to lose possibly be tied to such a vile act? For 3 days, Gao denied everything. He sat under the bright lights of interrogation, refusing to crack, deflecting questions with the icy calm of an actor who knew how to hold a role. But time erodes even the strongest masks. Investigators pressed harder, breaking through inconsistencies in his alibi. They confronted him with fragments of evidence, messages that hinted at disputes with Long, financial records that didn't add up, witnesses who had seen the two in heated argument. Slowly, the cracks in Gao's composure widened. His hands trembled. His answers contradicted themselves. The man who once commanded cameras with charm now struggled to keep his story intact. On the 3rd day, the breaking point arrived. Exhausted, pale, his voice quivering, Gao Taiyu finally admitted what the world had feared. His words spilled into the room. A vile confession that painted the murder not as a random act, but as a brutal culmination of tension, and betrayal. He described arguments with Long that escalated into rage, threats exchanged, and ultimately, a plan that crossed a line from anger into atrocity. Investigators, hardened by years of cases, described the moment as chilling. The man before them was no longer the star adored on screens, he was a killer, recounting a crime in all its horror. News of the confession spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed across newspapers and online platforms. Gao Taiyu admits role in Menglong's murder. Clips of officials confirming his statement flooded television screens. The internet exploded with fury and disbelief. Hashtags like Gao Taiyu confession, justice for Menglong, and vile truth exposed trended globally. Fans who once idolized Gao now burned his posters in the streets. Some wept openly, unable to reconcile the face they admired with the monster he had revealed himself to be. The interrogation transcripts leaked, fuel to the fire. The words Gao used were cold, mechanical, and chillingly detailed. Spoke not only of his involvement but of motives rooted in betrayal, claims that Long had threatened him. Money and pride had collided in a deadly mix. But to many, his explanations felt hollow, though something darker was left unsaid. Why had he resisted confession for so long? Why did the details feel rehearsed, almost scripted? Was Gao telling the whole truth, or just the part convenient enough to close the case? The brutality of the confession left society polarized. Some believed it wholeheartedly, calling for swift justice. Whispered that Gao had been forced into confession, broken down not by guilt but by pressure, perhaps even scapegoated for something bigger. Conspiracy theories erupted. suggesting powerful figures in the entertainment industry had orchestrated Long's death and pushed Gao forward as the sacrificial lamb. The very vileness of his words seemed to invite doubt, too grotesque, too detailed, almost as if crafted to shock rather than explain. Long's family, the confession brought no relief. Parents, devastated, declared publicly that they would not rest until the full truth emerged. "My son did not die for money or pride alone," his father said through tears. "He knew something. He carried secrets." Confession is not the whole story. His words resonated deeply, planting seeds of doubt even in those ready to accept Gao's guilt at face value. The entertainment world collapsed under the weight of scandal. Studios cancelled Gao's projects. Brands severed contracts overnight. And networks scrubbed his face from reruns. Those who once worked alongside him faced questions of what they knew. The industry, already tarnished by whispers of corruption, now found itself under siege. Commentators asked aloud if Gao Taiyu, a beloved figure, could confess to such a vile act. Else was being hidden behind the curtains of fame. But the vilest element of all was not the confession itself but the imagery it conjured. Gao described the killing with chilling clarity, his words painting a reenactment inside the minds of listeners. To some, felt less like truth and more like theater, a grotesque performance meant to horrify. Investigators themselves admitted they were unsettled by how rehearsed he sounded. Was Gao unburdening himself? As he performing one final, terrible role, written by forces unseen? As the first part of this saga closes, the world is left in torment. Gao Taiyu has confessed, yes, but the vileness of his words leaves questions burning. Was this the true story of Menglong's murder? Or merely a mask hiding a darker truth? Why did it take 3 days for the confession to come? And who else might have benefited from silencing a man like Long? A man rumored to carry secrets that could destroy reputations and empires? The answers lie beyond the confession. Shadows that still cling to this case. And as Red Carpet Revealed turns the page, we dive deeper into the mystery, the fallout. Possibility that Gao Taiyu's vile words are not the end of the story, but only the beginning. The vile confession of Gao Taiyu was supposed to bring closure. After 3 days of relentless interrogation, admission of guilt shocked the world, horrified fans, and devastated Menglong's family. Instead of peace, his words opened a deeper abyss of suspicion and fear. The totality of his testimony lingered, not just for what he said, but for what he did not say. Was Gao truly the killer, or merely the foul guy in a larger, darker game? The trial moved forward. Analysts pored over every syllable of his confession. Gao's words painted a picture of resentment and betrayal, of arguments spiraling into violence. But the more investigators and journalists studied the details, the less they added up. The timeline Gao described clashed with phone records. Surveillance cameras that might have proven his movements went missing. Even the alleged weapon, once considered decisive evidence, revealed no fingerprints. These contradictions fueled the belief that Gao's confession, vile as it was, might not be the entire truth. Theories multiplied. Some argued that Gao, under immense psychological pressure, had simply broken and confessed to crimes he did not commit. He was coerced, a scapegoat chosen to protect more powerful figures behind the curtain. Still others whispered of an elaborate cover-up. Gao's downfall was staged to close the case quickly and silence further investigation. The reenactment of the crime he later participated in only added to the unease. His mechanical retelling, his strangely detached demeanor, made some wonder whether he was performing one last role, scripted by unseen hands. Meanwhile, the family of Menglong grew more vocal. His father, once shattered by grief, became a fierce advocate for deeper investigation. In interviews, he declared, "My son was not killed over petty disputes. He was silenced because he knew something. This confession is not justice, it is theater." His words resonated with the public, sparking protests outside the courthouse. Gathered holding signs reading "Truth, not theater and justice for Long." Movement grew, fueled by suspicion that the case was far from over. The entertainment industry found itself in turmoil. Studios panicked, canceling projects and cutting ties not only with Gao but with anyone remotely connected to him. Other actors were dragged into rumors, used by association. Contracts collapsed, sponsorships vanished, and the glamorous facade of showbiz crumbled under the weight of suspicion. The case became not just a murder trial but a mirror exposing the darkness beneath celebrity culture. Commentators noted that Gao's confession had less to do with truth than with power, an admission used to preserve an industry at risk of implosion. Journalists digging deeper uncovered fragments that hinted at what Yu Menglong may have known. Reports surfaced of encrypted files, acts manipulated to exploit young artists, money funneled through secret accounts. Some claimed Long had been preparing an expose, ready to go public with evidence that could have toppled empires. If true, then his murder was not about jealousy or money, it was about silencing a man who knew too much. The disappearance of those files after his death only deepened suspicions. Who took them? Were they destroyed? Or were they locked away by the very people Gao might have been protecting with his confession? The public divided into two camps. One side believed Gao was guilty as charged, accepting the confession and demanding harsh punishment. The other side believed he was a pawn, his vile confession nothing more than a performance extracted under duress. Online debates turned vicious, hashtags clashing as people argued over whether justice had been served or distorted. Memes spread portraying Gao as both monster and martyr, villain and victim. The cruelty of the case lay not only in the murder but in the uncertainty. The way truth itself seemed out of reach. The trial reached its climax with Gao delivering a final statement. He apologized to Long's family, his voice breaking. Yet even in apology, his words felt ambiguous. He spoke of being trapped in something larger and of taking the burden so others would not fall. To some, it was a coward's excuse. To others, the closest he could come to revealing that he had been forced into silence. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, journalists scrambling to interpret his cryptic lines. This his attempt at redemption, or his final act of deceit? When the verdict was delivered, guilty, with a life sentence, the reaction was not relief but exhaustion. The court had spoken, but doubts remained. The unanswered questions about the files, missing evidence, the contradictions, were never resolved. Gao was punished. Is justice truly served? Or had the vilest truth been buried alongside Yu Menglong? The fallout continued long after the gavel fell. Fans abandoned the industry in droves, disgusted by the scandal. Documentaries were produced, each promising to tell the real story but offering only fragments. Activists kept the protests alive, demanding an independent investigation. The phrase vile confession became shorthand for lies dressed as truth. A reminder that justice can sometimes be as brutal as the crime it seeks to avenge. And yet, the image that endures is not the verdict, or even the confession, but the sight of Gao Taiyu crumbling after 3 days of interrogation. The once beloved actor, mask shattered, his words vile, left an impression that haunts the collective memory. Whether he was guilty or scapegoat, villain or victim, the cruelty of his collapse stands as a symbol of the darkness behind fame. The case of Yu Menglong is not just about murder. It's about the fragility of truth, the ease with which it can be twisted, and the brutality of systems that demand confession whether real or false. Gao Taiyu admitted to the crime. Yes, but the world may never know whether his confession was the truth or the performance of a lifetime. Red Carpet Revealed leaves you with this: sometimes the cruelest story is not the one that is told, but the one that remains hidden. While confession may have closed the trial, but the truth behind Yu Menglong's death may still lie as shadows. The day it can no longer be silenced.